heard some screaming, and just it looked serious because people were just, running back and forth.
Tragedy struck the community of Schoharie on Saturday at a very well-known intersection located in front of the Apple Barrel store and cafe.
Approximately 1:55 p.m. this afternoon, Schoharie County 911 received 911 calls of an accident at the intersection of routes 30 and 30A in the town of Schoharie.
Neighbors living close by say they heard a loud bang and came outside to see people running from the cafe to help. They say first responders arrived shortly after and immediately went to work.
They used I think it's called Jaws of Life, to get into the car.
People at the Apple Barrel say the incident involved a large limo van and a local wedding party. They say several pedestrians were also hit trying to enter the store while their family members were already inside.
This is a two-vehicle, fatalities as a result of this crash. The investigation is very preliminary. It's in its infancy stages. We have several units here investigating.
Neighbors saying they are still in a state of shock. They say the amount of first responders necessary was overwhelming.
I saw one individual being taken into an ambulance, but they had trouble getting other people out.
Police are not able to confirm any other details at this time. Some eyewitnesses at the accident say the limo went through the intersection, hitting another car and pedestrians before going into the gully.
Not until the collision reconstruction has completed. We're going to be here for several more hours in routes 30 and 38 at this intersection. We anticipate being closed down for several more hours.
I didn't know what was happening. We thought a tree was falling down or there was a tornado or something. I tried to get out of the car as fast as I could, and as I did, someone said, "There's a body laying right next to your car."
Linda Riley was parking outside of the Apple Barrel in Schoharie when she suddenly found herself near the horrific accident that claimed the life of 20 victims on Saturday.
I did not even want to come back to get my car, but I had to.
24 hours later, this community is grieving. Those that were here both in the parking lot or inside the restaurant say they're still trying to make sense of this tragedy.
My wife and I could have been out there any time. You know, it's only moments and seconds. When you go one way or the other, anything can happen, and we were about to take my daughter to the pumpkin patch, so I just thought about that.
William Preble and his wife Adrienne were eating at the time the accident happened. They say from the inside you had no sense of what had happened in the parking lot.
My first thought was to go and pray. So I actually got up from the table.
We knew something was serious when somebody outside said, does anyone here know how to do CPR?
They say staff sprung into action quickly as first responders arrived to the scene. Those here say both should be praised for how this was handled.
I think what I was most impressed by was the fact that how the owners of the restaurant and the staff just really held it all together.
The National Transportation Safety Board is calling it the deadliest transportation accident in the country in 9 years.
20 fatalities is just horrific. I've been on the board for 12 years, and this is one of the biggest loss of lives that we've seen in a long, long time.
State police say a 2001 Ford Excursion limousine was traveling southwest on State Route 30 when it failed to stop at the intersection with State Route 30A. The SUV limo hit an unoccupied car before hitting and killing two pedestrians standing nearby.
I didn't know what was happening. We thought a tree was falling down or there was a tornado or something. I tried to get out of the car as fast as I could, and as I did, someone said, "There's a body laying right next to your car."
Police say all 18 people in the limo died, including the driver.
Thank you.
Police answered few questions about the investigation Sunday.
Was the limousine over capacity, or do you know, or was it fit for the number of people that were actually in it?
I can't discuss that.
Do we have a sense of what killed them? Was it blunt force trauma?
I'm not going to get into that.
Police also didn't say if speed was a factor, if the driver had been drinking, or if the car's brakes were working properly. NTSB says it expects to remain on the scene in Schoharie for about 5 days.
At this point in time, we look at everything. We look at the vehicle factors. We look at the roadway. We look at survival factors. We look at the condition of the drivers, the licensing of the drivers. We look at the operator itself, the company. We look at everything.
State police are also offering assistance to help those still trying to grasp what happened.
The state police have set up a dedicated phone line to assist the family members of the victims in the crash. We encourage them to call 1-877-672-4911 and speak with a member of the state police.
We're human. sometimes you try to be tougher than, you really are. And then all at once it comes crashing down.
Matthew Deffer is the Esperance fire chief. He says he heard the limo pass him at a gas station about a half hour before the crash.
It just caught us off guard. You hear this loud vehicle come through the intersection, you just turn around and look and, realize that it's a limo that sounded just horrible. I just thought to myself, well, hopefully they're going to get that thing repaired.
Then Deffer got the call. He didn't know it was the limo, but he knew it must have been a serious crash.
I mean, we're about, I would say, 8 miles from Schoharie. And they called us in for assistance, and that's, we knew it had to have been bad because, usually departments don't reach out too far.
What's more, Deffer was set to use the same service for his own wedding weeks before. Their reservation was ultimately canceled.
It's scary. It is very scary, and luckily we went a different route. I guess you just don't know today.
Family members and friends of the victims in Saturday's crash need grievance services, but what about the first responders? That's why there's a meeting being held here tonight at the Schoharie Volunteer Fire Department to help them get the services they need.
For somebody to have to go through this, they know that they do that when they sign on the job. I mean, we are volunteers, but it is a job that we all take seriously and professionally. And it does happen time to time, but nothing of this magnitude.
It's just terrible. It really is. I mean, they shouldn't have been operating.
The images of the last 2 days sit heavy on Andrew LaRose's shoulders. Exactly 1 year to the day after his wedding, 18 people killed while riding in a limousine van his own wedding party had been in. Another 2 people killed when they were struck by the vehicle.
After my experience going inside, the thing should have been in the scrapyard. Really should have.
The driver identified in the crash, 53-year-old Scott Lisanikia.
I found pictures of him right in front of the apartment with all my groomsmen outside the church, same limousine, same guy.
LaRose says from the minute the limo pulled up, he had a bad feeling.
Air conditioner was broken, there was duct tape that was painted white, rocker panels was rusted. It looked like it went through a chop shop.
In addition to questionable condition, LaRose says the driver's behavior was unacceptable. He was late picking them up after church and late again to shuttle guests from the reception to a nearby hotel. When confronted, LaRose says that Lisanikia used profanities.
I noticed there were empty beer cans in the back. I noticed that he had a second passenger sitting shotgun right next to him. Then I asked him, who was this? And then he started getting pretty upset with me.
LaRose also recalls erratic driving.
He missed Mohawk Riverview and threw it in reverse right on the highway. And instead of turning around and then going back way, he just went in reverse unsafely.
After several complaints to management, eventually they got a partial refund, and he and his new bride tried to put the limo experience behind them until they saw this on their first anniversary and felt compelled to share their story.
If they only took me seriously, this probably could have been avoided.
There were red flags that were either ignored or they weren't considered serious enough to keep the limo off the road. According to federal inspection documents posted on a U.S. Department of Transportation website, the fateful limo was cited for 14 violations just 32 days prior to the crash. Albany attorney Lee Kinlan, who represents the Hussein family that owns Prestige Limousine Service, says he believes no one should be playing the blame game before the investigation is over.
We believe in the fullness of time the investigation is going to show that there were a lot of different factors to this crash, and the state trying to point the finger at one particular thing, 48 to 60 hours after the tragedy is probably a little premature.
Some of the violations listed on the report have nothing to do with the roadworthiness of the limo. For example, the name of the operator needs to be on display, and the government certification number also needs to be in plain view. The report says they weren't. It also says the limo had been carrying more passengers than the manufacturers engineered it to carry. In addition, the brake malfunction indicator light on the dashboard wasn't working properly, the windshield wipers were defective, and deficiencies uncovered during previous inspections had been ignored. Lee Kinlan says the company is fully complying with the investigation.
Right now, a lot of paperwork, maintenance records, ownership records, things like that.
Wednesday night, Nalman Hussein walked out of Cobleskill Town Court after posting a $150,000 bond. Behind him, his brother and his girlfriend, all three escorted to a white Escalade by Hussein's defense attorney, Lee Kinlan.
Of my client and his family, I ask that you respect their privacy.
Kinlan says both he and Hussein received threatening emails and phone calls. That is why he says the 28-year-old Prestige limousine operator left his home Wednesday morning.
There's this fear that the address that he typically used and an address that his family has used was starting to be reported, and he felt as if he could be in danger at that house.
According to Schoharie County District Attorney Susan Mallory, Hussein had luggage with him when his car was stopped and he was arrested by New York State Police. But Kinlan maintains his client had no plan to flee the country. His U.S. passport was pending renewal, and he does not have dual citizenship, though he was born in Pakistan.
And we agreed, as an act of good faith, to turn over that passport to show that our client will not go anywhere during the pendency of this case.
Hussein is charged with one count of criminally negligent homicide. Attached to the Class C felony, the 20 names of the victims involved in Saturday's crash in Schoharie. A not guilty plea was entered by the judge.
My client, not guilty, does not want sympathy or pity from anybody. He understands that this is the process and it has to take place.
Common sense, if it had been used here a little bit, even a tiny little bit, it would have prevented this from happening.
Attorney Sal Ferlazzo is representing Thomas and Donna Rivenberg in a civil lawsuit. The defendants, Shahid and Nalman Hussein, the owner and operator of Prestige Limo. Amanda Rivenberg was killed last month in the Schoharie limousine crash, along with 19 others. Amanda worked with an organization that serves people with disabilities.
It's for personal injury damages, for both compensatory damages and punitive damages. Punitive damages are meant to punish people who commit either gross negligence or just heinous situations.
The suit does not mention any specific monetary amount that the family is seeking. It alleges the Husseins were aware the limo failed inspections, had significant and serious defects, and it was dangerous to place on roadways.
If you let bad conduct go unpunished, you're supporting it, and this is very bad conduct.
Ferlazzo says they also plan to sue New York State, but that will have to be done in the Court of Claims.
It could have been confiscated when there was multiple errors and should have been confiscated. So that's issue number one. Issue number two is the design and maintenance of this road. This was reconstructed in 2008 to avoid other problems which are very serious and other fatalities. Again, our expert has documented that the improvements may have made things even worse.
He says the limo was insured, and they now have 4 months to serve the Husseins with the lawsuit, even though Shahid is in Pakistan.
There's even some kind of Twitter site in Pakistan that's identified that we've already sued. So he probably already knows that the suit is filed. I doubt he's coming back, but that is not going to stop us from going forward.
It got a little heated, but ultimately it was decided that, like I said earlier, all of us believed that we were right, and it kind of led to a swift conclusion of the phone call.
The 45-minute conference call Friday night over access to the limo from the Schoharie crash between the NTSB, the district attorney and defense attorney Lee Kinlan ended when Susan Mallory hung up. The NTSB told the judge its work with the DA was, quote, disappointingly unproductive. In a letter Monday asking the court to allow them immediate and unfettered access to the vehicle before the inspection or removal of the transmission and torque converter. In her letter, the district attorney says their inspections are almost done, and when appropriate, the NTSB can do its own work with restrictions. Mallory suggesting under state police supervision, allowing for photos and measurements, but nothing altered, removed, or destructed by NTSB investigators. Kinlan says they hammered out a general schedule and everyone is ready when the judge gives the green light.
So I would say the next steps of examining this vehicle would be within the next couple of weeks. When the final reports come out, when we can get down into the transmission and all those things,
you know, that I think is within the next couple of months.
Attorney Kinlan says his investigators have had access to the limo, and he told the judge he wants to continue to be involved. As for whether he agrees to add the NTSB to the state police search warrant,
I don't think officially the defense has standing to contest who is put on a search warrant.